Welcome to Conversations with Dr. Brian Harris and friends. This will be a webinar series on the next generation of category management. This series is designed to help you rethink how strategy, data, and AI can all work together to drive smarter decisions and stronger results. We'll be featuring some of the leading experts in the area of category management, and their important three phases of strategy, planning, and execution. We'll discuss methodology that can transform your business. I'm Julie Beck, the Chief Customer Officer at Intent AI, and over 30 years of experience in CPG using Dr. Harris's processes at P&G, J&J, and Kraft, and have been a friend of Brian's for over 15 years. Now it's with great pleasure to introduce Dr. Brian Harris, often referred to as the father of category management. Welcome, Brian.
Hello, Julie. Thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this, and also for organizing this very important series. So I think that the series is well timed because, as we know, the world is changing very quickly, and the next generation of category management, particularly driven by new AI analytics and tools, we think is going to be very much part of the future of how marketing is done, both on the retailer and the supplier side within our industry. So
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for organizing it. I think it's exciting, and I hope that people that take advantage of it will learn much from it.
We're excited to talk to you today. I'm going to start with the first question. You pioneered category management in the late 1980s. What originally inspired the framework, and how has its role in retail evolved over the last 35, 40 years?
Julie, you make me feel old. Is it really 40 years? It's interesting. People referred to me as the father of category management for the first 20 years. Now I think I'm the grandfather of category management for the next 20 years. I must be right on the edge of the great-grandfather of category management, 3 generations in. Anyway, no, it's very interesting because I've always connected category management into the evolution of retail marketing practices, okay? And the slide you're looking at basically, to me, has always been indicative of how the evolution of retail marketing has happened in our business. And I've always likened it to like waves, because and I'll explain this in a little bit more detail, but one wave of new approach leads to the next wave, which shapes the next wave, and so on and so forth. So if you go back in the history of this, you'll see that before category management, what really started to drive the need for these new processes were really 3 things. Okay, firstly, changes in consumers' needs and wants. Okay, as consumers began to have different expectations in terms of lifestyles, in terms of demographics, and so on, we needed to have business processes that stayed on top of, that adjusted to these new consumer needs and expectations. Okay. Secondly, new competition, as we know, continues to drive the need for new processes. And I'll relate that to category management in a moment. And then thirdly, the availability of new forms of data and new technology has really been the 3 factors that have shaped the evolution of these waves as we've gone from 1975, which to me was the first step in this beginning of retail marketing evolution, with the availability of POS scanning data. We were able to, for the first time, know what we were really selling at the store level. Okay, there was no need to look at different forms of data. We knew what was selling. We knew that one store sold more of this product than other stores. So we were able then to start to dissect and in much greater detail the sales patterns and the consumer responses in a store by store basis. Category management clearly began to take advantage of this because we now had a way of really analyzing sales at a category level. Okay, the other driver that was really shaping category management back in the early days was the changing nature of competition. Discounters like Walmart were beginning to exert their muscle. Category killers were becoming a real factor, and they were challenging very much so the traditional channels of supermarkets, drugstores, convenience stores, and so on. And that type of competition was very much driven at the category level. Walmart initially was a category killer. They went after the high margin categories, health and beauty, and so on, where supermarkets and drugstores made all their money. So they went after those categories. And then, of course, we had the emergence of category killers. The best example is pet stores, pet category killers.
I remember.
I remember a presentation that was made to the U.S. supermarket industry in 1993, in which the consulting company did an analysis, and they said 5 years before that, the U.S. supermarket industry had 93% of all pet products sold in the United States, pet food, pet supplies. 5 years later, when they were presented the study, that had dropped to 54%. Tremendous erosion of key categories at the expense of these category killers like Walmart and PetSmart and Petco and so on and so forth. So clearly, we had to change.
Yeah.
And category management became a kind of a logical ground to really breed that change, because we knew that consumers buy by category largely. They formulate their needs by category. We need a model that allowed us to be more category specific in our marketing, and category management really provided that model. Now, as you go through the evolution of this, category management was purely a very important first step in the transition of retailers from basically distributors to marketers. And they did it with the emergence of these new forms of data. Loyalty data then took us to an even deeper level of understanding of consumer transactions. Okay, and that then provided the basis for the next wave, and so on and so forth, right? So we had this evolutionary process of these three factors driving change, and these new methods and ideas coming to fore to capitalize on these changes. So that's what this, and as we'll talk about later, the latest personalized consumer response model is really just an evolution. It's a natural progression of evolution of this wave of retail marketing evolution.
Well, let's talk about kind of where it all started with the ECR model, right? So I believe this is from a 1995 report that you worked on with the industry. Tell the audience about this ECR model.
Well, it's interesting because of the impact of category killers and discounters. The industry was under great threat, and no question about it. So in the U.S. initially, an industry initiative called the Efficient Consumer Response Initiative was formed, consisting of retailers and manufacturers. And the whole idea of that was to find more effective ways to compete against these new and effective forms of competition. Now, initially, the focus was on supply chain. We had to get our costs down. Walmart and these category killers had a much lower cost structure, therefore were able to have lower prices and so on and so forth, right? So the whole idea was then we had to get our costs down. Now, I and other people said, well, that's a piece of the solution, but we also needed to have superior demand side processes. Processes that focused on marketing more effectively to the shopper, matching up our offerings to their expectations. And this is really where category management filled the void, because we had already proven that category management worked. So the category management model then really became the framework for the demand side of ECR. Okay, and the scope of it was basically as you're seeing here. What was decided was that the two centerpieces clearly of any business process need to be strategy and the process itself. So strategy has to be that central core of driving these business methods. And then they have to be supported by these, what we call enabling components. We had to have organizational skills and capabilities, new ones. We had to have better collaborative relationships. We had to have ways of measuring our success differently, scorecards. And then we had to have the information technology to drive it. So essentially, this became kind of the scope, if you wish, of category management. And that really was the outcome, the output the 1995 report on category management, which I helped write, which then defined category management. The 8-step process was suggested as the best practice way to do business planning, and the rest of it. And that model has provided the category management framework and process ever since.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. Now, you've mentioned and you've kind of been passionate about the fact that traditional category management is no longer sufficient in today's retail environment. Biggest gaps that you see or current challenges for organizations?
Yeah, I think category management has had a remarkable history. There's no question. I mean, there's very few methods in our business that last 35 plus years. Okay, things come, things go. New ideas come, new ideas go. Processes come, processes go. Category management has been around, which says a lot about its adaptability. Okay, no question about it.
Yep.
But like anything, things change. The environment changes, competition changes, new forms of data and technology change. So we need to continue to upgrade. And what we've really come to realize, I think, in the last 5 or so years, is that the traditional model of category management needs to be upgraded for a number of reasons. Okay, firstly, category management, as this slide says, category management always started with strategy. I think what's been lost in the last 5 years, there's been too much focus on category management being a tactical process, focusing on assortment, on planogramming, on promotion, and so on and so forth. Yes, that's a part of category management, but if you lose the strategic driving force behind it, you never know whether the tactics are correct or not. You never know whether they're delivering the right kinds of strategies against your consumers and competition. So firstly, I think category management has become too tactical. Okay. Secondly, it's looking too back. It's looking backward, not forward. We know that the opportunities are what's in the future, not what's today or in the past. And category management has, I think, focused because of the data we've looked at, has focused more on the past, which we can learn from that, but it isn't necessarily going to unlock the future success that we're looking for. Okay, the abundance of when I think about it, early category management, we had so little data to drive it. Today we have an abundance of data, all kinds of multiple sources of data, in many ways an overwhelming amount of data.
Great.
So we're seeing a lot of data available, but we're short on insights. We're just not cutting through the data in an efficient way to be able to see what really is important, what's really going to drive categories in our business into the future. Okay, the process has become, as a result, very cumbersome. It's inefficient. It takes too much time. It's too slow. Slowness in our business is deadly because things change so fast.
Yeah.
If it takes us 3 or 4 months to do a joint category business plan, a lot of things can change in 3 or 4 months. So we have to do our joint planning work much faster and much more efficiently. The bottom line, I think, is that category management started off, when I started it, my goal was to give a process that led to differentiation. I think we've lost that.
Yeah.
I think we've lost the ability to use category management to differentiate the outcomes. And I think that's a problem. So sameness versus differentiation, unfortunately, is not where we need to be. I think some of that is due to the limitations of the traditional category management model, which we need to upgrade. So I think, Julie, that's the combination of elements that I think need to go into a next generation of category management. Now, you have a long experience of using category management, so I'd be most interested in what you see.
Yeah. Well, I had the binders in 1990 when I started at P&G, and I remember being excited that there was kind of a roadmap, but to your point, there was only one data source, and that was POS. And so you just kind of read the data, answered the questions, and moved on. But recently, even in the last year or so, I still see, again, to your point, a lot of tactical focus, both from retail and manufacturer. I think joint business planning is not really joint beneficial planning at all. I think it's often very one-sided. and very tactical in nature. And then the other piece that I think AI is going to really make a difference is how much time it takes to do a category review. So, just that classic process, even the 8 steps today can take anywhere to 4 to 6 months, which to your point is just too long. And you think about all the categories that manufacturers have to often manage, and the retailer, of course, and department level. And it's just overwhelming. And so I think what happens is people just kind of throw up their hands and kind of go with the easiest low hanging fruit versus trying to really dig for those breakthrough
Mm,
opportunities.
Yeah, thank you, Julie. I think they're all very valid points.
So recently, you and I and one of our coworkers, we published a white paper around the evolution between ECR and PCR, which stands for personalized consumer response. Can you talk about how that model differs? The PCR model differs from ECR?
Yeah, I think, Julie, as I said earlier, I think there's three factors that have driven every change in the retail marketing space. Okay, consumers, competition, and tools and technology. Right. I personally believe that the next era of change is going to be heavily driven by the availability of data and the ability of AI tools to be able to uh, analyze that data, show opportunities much more quickly, look into the future, and give us better predictions and projections of where categories are headed, and therefore I think you know, and also the ability to target our consumer and shoppers as individuals, much will become much more enhanced with the availability of AI targeting techniques, right? So I think for the reason we mentioned before, the traditional category management, as both you and I mentioned, has limitations today. We need to upgrade that process, and we particularly need to take advantage of the growing availability of proven AI tools. And I think category management is perfectly suited for AI applications. Lots of data. Traditionally, it's been spreadsheet based. We can quickly change that. So I think there's a number of reasons why category management is very suitable to AI, including the fact that we have processes. The 8-step process is still a very important core element of category management. But we need to build on that. We need to evolve that into the next generation. So I thought there was a real need to upgrade category management into the next generation. And the whole idea of, if you go back to ECR, ECR was really driven by this need to have the consumer, and now the consumer and the shopper at the center of our business processes. Okay. And we borrowed this essentially from the ECR model, because if you think about it, the centerpieces are this new process, an upgraded process for category management, much more geared to the integrated benefit of consumers and shoppers, and supported by tools and technology, new people capabilities, a better collaborative framework, AI driven, and then integrated data systems, the ability of AI to integrate these multi-source data sets into a framework where the dots can be connected much more effectively. So it's a very similar type of scope and set of components that go into it, but clearly upgraded to take advantage of the availability of these much greater number of data sources and powerful AI tools and technology.
Excellent. So you reference a new process. So you have that classic 8 steps.
Yeah,
And let's maybe talk to the audience about what's new in the upgraded process. Maybe just a quick overview of what's
yeah.
coming, what's new.
Okay. Well, if you think the way we're thinking about it, there really is like three elements to the next generation of category management, or three phases. There's the strategy phase, where we simply define who we want to go after, what segments, how we want them to respond to our ultimate offers, how competitors are positioning, and therefore what kind of differentiation do we want to have our strategies deliver? Okay, so that's the first element, first phase. The middle one, of course, is planning. We need to have our planning processes focus on the most valuable segment of consumers and shoppers. Okay, we want to quantify those opportunities, and then we want then we want to be able to influence the consumer and shopper as they navigate that consumer and shopper journey to be able to use our plans to facilitate the navigation of the consumer and the shopper through that consumer and shopper journey. Now, the execution is kind of where we've been at, and that is, we once we have the strategy in place and we know the purpose of our planning and the elements of our of planning, we then need to manage our categories in the way that we've done for many years, and that is we need to. The 8-step process will still give us the framework for tactically addressing the strategy and the planning requirements. So I think we need a combination of these three things. So the next generation of category management will be much more attention will be given to the strategy piece, because I think that's missing. I think we have more data to be more insightful in our strategic planning and our strategic analysis of opportunities. And then I think we have some very good models for how we navigate our planning process to really lead into the day-to-day execution phase. So I think, Julie, this is really the elements that need to be put together or combined in this next generation of category management that we're embarking on.
Agree. What I'm excited about is, when my time in manufacturer world, we spent so much energy, money, resources understanding consumer and also shopper, but rarely were we able to integrate. And that's where the power is, I think, in this upgraded process is really helps to unlock at the specific retailer level, which is where the most action can happen. I mean, you stay up at the channel level, you can get some good insights, but going down into each specific retailer and how to help that retailer differentiate in their market is really the power that manufacturer can bring to this process.
And I think one of the key additions, Julie, is this whole concept of the most valuable segment. We retailers and manufacturers spend a lot of time being distracted and allocating resources to categories and consumers and shoppers where there's really no big bang for the buck, right? Because we know from lots and lots of research and work that 70% of our sales come from 25-30% of our consumers and shoppers. So we need to be very clear on who that most valuable segment is. And I know as we go through this webinar series, we're going to focus more on how we identify this most valuable segment, because that is a critical difference, I think, in the whole focus of how we do category management in the future. Okay.
Well, it's exciting. Thank you so much. I think, and what would you say as kind of some parting thoughts on how people can think about where we are today and where we're going in the future?
Well, again, if you go back to the evolution of retail marketing, right? I mean, in many ways, this phase we're entering is very predictable. It's a logical progression along the waves of retail marketing evolution. Okay. So it's, and there will be more to come after this. There'll be this wave will shape the next wave, right? So I do think it's a very logical next step in the evolution of these marketing practices. Okay, clearly the time is right, because we now have some new things to play with. Okay, particularly in the AI space. The tools we have, the data, the ability to connect the dots across these multiple databases, qualitative and quantitative, like never before. They're going to give us a number of new opportunities that will address the current limitations of the current category management method. So the timing is right. Okay. Now I know, Julie, in future sessions, we're gonna unfold the the actual new business model, the new business model. The one here we're looking at, the 8 steps, is very much embedded in it, but we will enhance that model much more strategically with these new planning frameworks embedded in and drivers of how we do the traditional day-to-day 8-step category management model. So I think the timing is right. We don't want to miss the boat, okay?
Nope.
Because you only get these windows. You get these windows. Our industry moves fast, and you get these windows of opportunity, of transitional opportunities. They don't come every day, but you need to be like a good wave. You need to be on the front of the wave, not on the back of the wave. So I think the timing is right. I think some of the early results that we've had in using this approach are very, very impressive. They're not just simply little minor tweaks of the scorecards. These are significant results because we're really looking at consumers and shoppers in a very, very different way and having a process that allows us to unlock these opportunities like never before. So I think the time is right. The processes work. And now it's a matter of really implementing and seeing the results and the return on investment.
Excellent. Couldn't agree more. I was just curious, is the wave because you live on the California coast and you used to be a surfer back in the day?
Oh yeah. That's where that was the origin. As I think a lot of people know, I was born and raised in Australia, right? And surfing is a big deal, right? From when you were a very little kid, right? And you learn how to ride a wave. You also learn when to get off the wave, right? So the whole idea of one wave shaping the next wave is very much a surfing analogy, which I relate to.
And we can all relate to that. Thanks so much, Brian. We really appreciate your time and your thoughts. And we're excited for people to join our webinar series. You can stay tuned for upcoming webinars as we talk about transforming category management and revolutionizing the retail industry. Thank you.